Hi everyone, in this video we are going to talk a little bit more about bond percolation. So I remind you that in the previous video I defined bond percolation in D dimension. The idea is that you start with the D-dimensional integer lattice. You assume that all the edges are independently open with probability p, closed with probability 1 minus p. And then the main question in percolation theory is looking at the subgraph of the open edges. Is it true that this subgraph contains an infinite connected component? So is there an infinite connected component of open edges? Now, it turns out that you can do this operation on any graph, and a lot of research in percolation theory consists in looking at an infinite graph again, assuming that edges are independently open with probability p, and again the question is there an infinite connected component of open edges, in which case we say that percolation occurs, or at the opposite, is it true that all the open clusters are finite? Now, another thing we can do, and that's what we are going to do in this video, is define bond percolation on a finite graph, in which case, obviously, all the connected components of open edges are going to be finite, but a natural question can be, what can we say about the size, the typical size of an open cluster? So more precisely, we are going to consider bond percolation on the tetrahedron. So I remind you that the tetrahedron is the smallest one of the 5 Platonic solids. It has 4 vertices and 6 edges. So to define bond percolation on this graph, we just assume that the 6 edges are independently open with the same probability p. Now, let's fix a vertex x uniformly at random, one of the 4 vertices. Which vertex doesn't really matter by complete symmetry. Then the goal of the problem is to find the expected value of the number of vertices in the open cluster starting at x. So the answer is given by this expression at the bottom of the slide. So of course that's a function of the density of open edges p. And the first step to prove this result is to first fix 2 vertices x and y, so 2 different vertices. And the first step is to compute the probability that those 2 vertices are connected by a path of open edges. So to compute this probability, first I'm going to draw a picture of the tetrahedron so that we understand what's going on. We have those 2 vertices x and y are different. So the tetrahedron looks like that. So that's a 3D picture that I'm doing here. So it's a shape like that. So you have indeed 1, 2, 3, and 4 vertices. And you see by perfect symmetry, it doesn't matter which 2 vertices we choose. So let's say, for instance, that x is here and y is here. So now, to compute this probability, the first step is just to observe that the event that there is an open path connecting x and y is exactly the event that one of the self-avoiding paths, and there are only a finite number, of course, because the graph is finite, so the probability that this event is exactly the event that at least one of the self-avoiding paths connecting x and y is open. Now, so the first step is going to be to identify all those self-avoiding paths. So again, self-avoiding means that there is no loop in the path. Okay. So now it turns out that there are 5 such paths, and they are kind of complicated to draw on this picture. So what I'm going to do instead is use what we call a planar representation of this graph. You see that there are 4 vertices, 6 edges. 6 is also 4 choose 2. That's the number of pair of vertices, and indeed any 2 vertices are connected to each other. So in fact, in terms of graph, not in terms of solid, but at least in terms of graph, and this is only the thing that matters here, the tetrahedron is exactly the complete graph with 4 vertices. And we saw in a previous video that the complete graph with 4 vertices is a planar graph. There is a way to draw this graph, and so I'm going to draw a picture here. For instance, if you put the vertices here, then eventually you can draw those edges like that. And that's exactly, in terms of graph, the same as this. Okay, it's exactly like you would see the tetrahedron from the top, and you would see that exactly. So I'm going to use this representation to show you all the paths going from x to y, all the self-evolving paths going from x to y. And so I told you there are 5 of them. So I'm going to draw 5 pictures like that. So just the vertices first. So let's do one picture like this. Then 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, and I'm going to draw in red all the possible paths. So let's assume that those 2 vertices are vertices x and y. So clearly, the simplest possible path is just the edge that connects x and y. So that's one path. Then another one is well, something with 2 edges. So we can classify them by number of edges we use. So you can also, instead of going directly to this side, go to one of those 2 ones, and then you go to this second one after. So there is this second path. Then after, some kind of symmetric, that's this one. And then you look at the path with 3 edges. And so here, indeed, you start like this one, you go this way, and then to the right here, and you go here, and then this one, this one, this one, which is the symmetry. So here, you have all the possible self-evolving paths going from connecting x and y. And so you have only 5 of them. So I'm going to give names to those events. I'm going to call, for instance, A1 the event that this edge is open. Then A2 is going to be the event that those 2 edges are open. Then A3 is the event that those 2 edges are open. Then again A4, A5. Okay, so like in general, AI is going to be the event that the path number I, the self-evolving path number I, is open. And so now it's clear that this path is open with probability p, this one with probability p square, because you have 2 edges and they are independently open with probability p square again, p cube. Now, the problem is that those events also are not mutually exclusive, okay? It's possible, for instance, if you look at A1 intersection A2, well, those 2 events are not incompatible, so which means that the probability of the union of those events, which is exactly this event, is not equal to the sum of the probabilities. So what do we do in this case when we have events that are not mutually exclusive to compute the probability of a union? Well, we use the inclusion-exclusion identity. Now the problem is that we have 5 events, so that gives you a lot of terms. So I'm not going to probably give you all the calculation, but at least I'm going to show you how we can start, and you can easily, in fact the calculation is not difficult, it's just long, and I'm just going to show you how it works and how we can do to find that. So first, this probability by definition of those events is exactly equal to the probability of the union of those events, so A1 union A2 up to A5. Then by inclusion-exclusion, this is equal to the sum of the probabilities of those 5 events. So that's P of A1 that gives you 5 terms, P of A1 plus P of A2 and so on up to P of A5. Then after you have a minus probability of intersection of any 2 events. So minus P of, let's start with A1 intersection A2. Then minus A1 intersection A3, A1 intersection A4, A1, A5, A2, A3, and so on. So that's going to give you a total here, after the minus, that's going to give you a total of 5 choose 2 possible intersection of two events, okay? So 5 choose 2 is 5 times 4, 20 divided by 2, that gives you a 10. So here you have 10 terms, and you keep going. Then plus probability of intersection of 3 events, so P of A1 intersection A2 intersection A3. Okay, again here you keep going, and you should have a total of 5 choose 3 possibilities of choice of 3 events. That gives you again 10 terms. Then again a minus probability of intersection of 4 events. So A1 intersection A2 intersection A3 intersection A4, and so on. And then again you are going to have here 5 choose 4 terms here. That's exactly equal to 5, exactly like here. And then you keep going, and then eventually you have minus the probability of the intersection of all of them. So that's how you can proceed to compute this. So you see that here, because the graph is finite and pretty small, you can indeed list all the possible self-avoiding paths, and you can have some exact calculation, even if it's a little bit long. You can compute that explicitly. And so I'm not going to do all that, that's too many terms, and that's not the point of this video, but at least I can show you a little bit how to start. So for the first term, for the first one here, well, this one is easy because you look at single path. We said that probability that the right edge here is open is just P. Probability that the right path is open here and here, it's P squared because you have 2 edges. Here it's P cubed. And so this sum of 5 terms here is just going to be, and I'm going to put parentheses to show like the different steps, is going to be P plus 2p squared plus 2p cubed. Then after you have a minus. And so let's start looking at what we get if we look at intersections. So if you look at the intersection of those two ones, that gives you 1, 2, 3 edges must be open, so that A1 and A2 occur simultaneously. You need a set of 3 edges to be open, so that's going to be P cubed. It's the same for this one, okay? That's completely symmetric, so you get 2P cubed. So here you start with 2P cubed. Then intersection of those two ones, that gives you 1, 2, 3, 4 edges, so you have a P4, same for this one. So here you have a plus 2P at the power 4. So now we have our first 4 events here correspond like after the minus. That corresponds to intersection between A1 and one of those 4 ones. So now we need to keep going. So now let's look at A2 intersection A3, that gives you 1, 2, 3, 4 edges. Okay, so here you are going to have a plus P4 again, and so on. So let's do one more, let's say. So if you look at A2 intersection this one, so you have an edge in common, so you again have a P4. By symmetry, you should have the same here. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 edges, so you have plus 2P4 and so on. Okay, so you see that that takes a while. Also, when you deal with intersection of 3 paths, you know, it's more difficult to figure out what's going on. So intersection A1, A2, A3, that gives you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 edges and so on. But eventually, I think you get the idea, and I hope you realize that it's not very difficult. It's just long, but it's not very difficult. And so, if you look carefully at intersection of several of those events, so intersection of, let's say in general, AI intersection AJ is going to have a probability that is equal to P at the power the total number of edges if you look at the superposition of paths I and J. So that's pretty simple, okay, in concept. It's just that you have many terms, okay? So eventually, after computing, doing all those calculations, you would find indeed that if we take two vertices like that, the probability that they are connected by an open path is just equal to this. So now that was the first step. Now how can we conclude? How can we deduce from that the expected number of vertices or sites in the percolation cluster starting at X? So here the idea is going to be to write this as a sum of zeros or ones depending on whether so you have a sum of 4 zeros or ones depending on whether each of the 4 vertices are in the cluster starting at X. So what I can do is just now we are going to go back to this representation in 3D. So we have something that looks like that. Let me draw a better picture. So we have something that looks like this and like this. So let's call, for instance, this vertex X. We want to look at the open cluster starting from X. Let's call those three ones, so we use Y here. So let me call them Y1, Y2, and Y3. And in general, I'm going to, for instance, call, let's say, Xi, or maybe not Xi because it's used for already the edges, but let's say zeta of Z in general is going to be equal to the indicator function on the event that Z, vertex Z, is in the open cluster starting at X, which is Cx. So if I call this function, so Z in Cx, so cluster starting at X, so it's clear that that the total number, so this is a random variable, of course, and it's clear that the cardinal of Cx, okay, so the number of vertices in Cx is exactly going to be equal to zeta x plus zeta y1, y2, y3, okay? So maybe I can write this. So now from this definition, we have that Cx is equal to zeta x plus zeta y1 plus zeta y3, okay? And so now to compute the expected value of the size of the cluster starting at X, so you just look at expected value of this, that's the expected value of the sum on the right. You have 4 terms, clearly bilinearity of the expected value of the sum is the sum of the expected value, so that's exactly the expected value of zeta x. You see also that by symmetry, the 3 random variables zeta y1, zeta y2, zeta y3 have the same probability mass function. These are Bernoulli random variables. So that what I mean is that the probability that y1 is in the cluster starting at x is exactly the same as the probability that y2 is in this cluster, and same for y3. And so eventually, to compute the expected value of the size, you can just look at, so expected value of this, I'm going to write that, expected value of zeta x plus 3 times the expected value of, let's say, zeta y1. So 3 times expected value of zeta y1. Now, what about the expected value of zeta x? Well, zeta x is exactly indicator function on the event that x is in the cluster starting from x. Well, yeah, that happens always. By definition, x is in its own open cluster starting from itself. So this event for z equals x always happens. So zeta x is equal to 1. Okay, so that gives you a 1. And then plus 3 times. Well, what about this expected value here? Well, expected value of an indicator function that's going to be the probability that z, in this case, y1, so that's the probability that y1 is in the cluster starting from x, but y1 is indeed in the cluster starting from x if and only if there is an open path, okay, connecting x and y1, which means that this expected value here is exactly, so expected value of this indicator function, that's the probability of this event, that's exactly the probability that x and y1 are connected. Now, here we call that y, that's any of those three vertices that have, those two ones have to be different. So eventually this is exactly the same as that. And that's it, and we are done basically. So that's the probability that x is connected to y, where this time y is whatever, it doesn't matter which vertex you choose as long as it's not vertex x. And now we are done. So now I can write the final result. So now what we know is that expected value of Cx so is equal to 1 plus 3 times this probability. So, and this probability is here. So that's just 3p plus 6p squared minus 21p at the power 4, then plus again another 21 p5 and minus 6p at the power 6. Okay, so eventually using this first step and all our reasoning, fact that the expected value is linear and so on, and some spherical symmetry, we deduce that the expected number of vertices or sites in the open cluster starting at x is equal to this expression. And so now coming back to the slide, you see that indeed at the bottom of the slide you see the expression for the expected value of the total number of sites, and indeed that's what we just proved.